When the awakening journey begins, the first signs usually arrive subtly, yet strong enough to leave you unsettled. The things that once gave you excitement, a job, a conversation, even familiar habits, suddenly lose their pull. You find yourself sitting in discussions that once fascinated you, but now it feels as if your energy is leaking out, leaving behind only emptiness. This does not mean you are depressed or have lost the joy of living. It is a profound shift in consciousness. In truth, you are moving from playing the role of the main character in your story to becoming the observer. Instead of being absorbed in life's repetitive scripts, you start noticing that another part of you is quietly watching, questioning, and observing everything that unfolds. This marks a turning point. For the first time, you begin to sense the distinction between the ego, programmed by habits, beliefs, and society, and consciousness, which has always been awake and unchanging. In quantum physics, this is called the observer effect. When an observer is present, the state of the particle changes. Likewise, when you become the observer of your own life, the reality you live in begins to shift, opening up the possibility of reshaping. You are no longer simply reacting out of old patterns, but start asking, why do I even care about this? Is it truly important to me? That moment is the doorway to freedom. While at first it may feel strange and unsettling, it is the signal that you are stepping into transformation. Losing interest in what once mattered is not loss. It is a reorganization of energy. Just as an outdated operating system must be uninstalled to make room for the new, your mind is clearing out obsolete programs to install a higher level of consciousness. Trust that this unfamiliar feeling is actually a gift. It proves you are breaking free from the endless loop, and for the first time, beginning to view your life with the eyes of a creator, not merely as someone swept away by the current. One of the subtle yet undeniable signs of awakening is the sensation of light detachment. You may catch yourself standing on the sidelines, watching life pass as if it were a dream. Events, words, even your own thoughts suddenly appear foreign, as if they no longer belong to you. Thoughts you once believed were you now sound like background programming running automatically. You realize that most of what you think each day is not fresh or creative, but looping cycles replayed from memories, beliefs, or unconscious social conditioning. Instead of getting pulled in, you begin listening like an outsider, like tuning in to a radio, playing on its own. And in that instant you see clearly, this is not me, this is just the program. Emotions too begin to feel different. Where once they could dominate and control you, making you identify with sadness, anger, or joy, now they come and go like weather, passing clouds in the sky that never touch your essence. You can experience sadness without drowning in it, feel anger without exploding, because you know they are only temporary energies moving through your system. In the light of quantum physics, this state is like observing a particle in superposition. It holds many possibilities at once, but only collapses into one when you interact with it. By quietly observing your thoughts and emotions without labeling them, you unlock the possibility that they no longer define you. Instead of being ruled by programming, you reclaim the power of choice. At first, this detachment may leave you disoriented, as though you are floating in a vague dream world. But in reality, this is the first step in realizing you are not the story, not the script, not the emotional current. You are the observer, unchanging, silent, powerful, learning to step outside the old program in order to write a new one. One of the most powerful experiences on the quantum awakening journey is realizing that identity itself is nothing more than a costume. The things that once defined you, your name, your past, your title, your social roles, suddenly feel too small for the truth within. It's as though you're wearing a shirt that's grown too tight, a shell that no longer reflects your real essence. Your name, which you've heard thousands of times, now echoes like a label stuck onto you rather than something belonging to your soul. Personal history, successes, failures, memories, feels like an old film you've watched far too often. Even roles you once proudly embraced, such as father, mother, successful one, or failure, now appear like coats handed to you by society, coats you wore without ever questioning. As you awaken, a natural urge arises to shed these layers. Like a snake shedding its skin, You feel compelled to release old shells, even though they once gave you safety and familiarity. This doesn't mean denying your history or roles, rather it means realizing they could never define the fullness of your being. You are not what has happened, you are infinite possibility unfolding. In the language of quantum physics, this is like an electron breaking free from its old orbit and leaping to a higher energy level. It is no longer bound by its former state. It redefines itself by entering a greater possibility. Similarly, when you release old identities, you do not lose yourself. You free up energy to expand into a larger, freer self. At first, this urge may puzzle you. If I am no longer all those labels, then who am I? Yet within that very question, a deeper truth flashes. You were never the labels the world placed upon you. You are the one wearing the clothes, not the clothes themselves. And when you see this, you unlock the doorway into the God state, a state where identity is no longer a chain, but a tool of creation. As you go deeper into the quantum awakening, many mistake this for withdrawal from life, imagining it as coldness or indifference. But the truth is the opposite. This is not escape. This is a frequency shift, a rebalancing within, where your consciousness begins to rise beyond the programming that has shaped you since childhood. Picture your body and mind as an instrument that has been playing the same tune for years. Those familiar notes are your beliefs, habits, and emotional patterns, imprinted by society, family, and the past. They repeat so consistently that you mistook them for your true self. But then one day, the frequency within you starts to vibrate differently. The old music suddenly sounds out of tune, and you long for a new symphony. This is precisely the moment consciousness begins to outgrow its programming. You start to recognize that the thoughts you once treated as truth are merely products of neural habit. The emotions that once swept you away are only repeated chemical reactions. And when you observe them from the distance of the witness, you realize you can choose a different frequency. Quantum physics calls this a retuning of oscillation. A particle can exist in many states, but only when observed does it collapse into a specific possibility. Human beings are the same. When you remain identified with old programming, you continuously recreate the same reality. But when you change your perceptual frequency, the entire energy field around you begins to recalibrate. It's not that you're denying reality. It's not that you reject feeling. Rather, you are stepping into a different vibrational field, one where fear no longer dominates, where narrow beliefs no longer imprison you. You are not fleeing life. On the contrary, you are entering it with a purer, freer level of energy. And from that moment, everything begins to shift. Relationships, work, habits, they all remain present, but you engage them from a wholly new frequency. This is the beginning of a rebalancing. The outside world hasn't yet changed, but inside, you have moved onto a different orbit, wider, clearer, and more intimate with your infinite nature. As awakening advances, a strange sense emerges. Your consciousness seems to separate from form. You are no longer confined to the body, the name, or the social roles. An ancient stream of knowing, like a memory from thousands of years ago, begins to stir within you. It doesn't arrive from books or teacherly instruction. It rises as a primitive intuition, something that has always been hidden deep inside and is now being awakened. Scholars, mystics, and prophets across history have described this phenomenon as awakening. They say that when a person realizes they are not merely a body and not merely the flow of thought in the head, a door to the deepest nature opens. Modern physics is beginning to touch this secret. Quantum physicist Amit Goswami has asserted, consciousness is not a product of matter, but the foundational element that precedes matter. In quantum experiments, particles don't exist as fixed objects until there is an observer. This undermines the old scientific model that regards matter as the basis of everything. Without observation, literally without consciousness, the universe is only a cloud of probability, not yet crystallized into reality. That means consciousness is the source and form is the effect. When you reach this level of awareness, intuition becomes vivid. You feel that you are not merely living in a body. Rather, the body is living within your vast field of consciousness. The outside world ceases to feel rigid and immutable. and instead becomes a mirror reflecting the frequency you emit. In every moment, you can choose to change that frequency. This is a fundamental inversion. Instead of believing you are the consequence of the universe, you realize you are its foundation, the observer, the creator, the awakener. The sensation is both expansive and humble. You are no longer just a small individual, but part of an ancient stream of consciousness waking up to remember itself. You begin to enter a strange phase. Two parallel worlds open at once. On one side, you continue living in the familiar world, work, family, responsibilities, meals, and daily habits. Everything operates as it always did. But parallel to that, you distinctly sense another realm, a dimension woven from your mind. Possibility and intention. In that realm, things aren't fixed like solid matter. Thoughts that arise, deep feelings, visualizations you plant in mind begin to form waves of reality. It is as if you've stepped onto the boundary that quantum science calls the probability field, where every possibility coexists until your intention shapes it. And when you observe, choose, and focus, that probability collapses into a specific, concrete reality. This explains the strange knowing that emerges. What you truly believe and imagine with full energy can become real. You start to recognize that the external world is not only built from atoms and molecules, but is also shaped by the frequency of mind. Quantum physics has shown that particles can occupy many states at once until observed. The observer is not merely the lab scientist, but you in each living moment. Living in these two worlds can make you doubt yourself. Part of the old rational mind whispers, "This can't be real. Reality must be solid and objective." But the newly born intuition whispers back, "You are more than that. You are co-creating." Between those two voices, you sense you are standing at the threshold of transformation. From this point on, every choice, every intention, even every breath carries weight. You are not only living in the familiar material world, you are touching a pliable universe where mind is the tool that creates reality. The two parallel worlds cease to be opposites and instead begin to merge within you, opening the possibility of becoming the conscious creator of this very universe. At a certain point in the awakening journey, you begin to notice strange signals arriving with increasing frequency. Coincidences that once merely surprised you now occur continuously, with clarity and purpose, so you can no longer dismiss them as chance. This is synchronicity, when the thoughts, feelings, or intuitions within you begin to intersect with the flow of the universe. You think of a long-lost friend, and minutes later they text you. You imagine a job opportunity, and the information appears the next day. You pose a question internally, and an answer appears unexpectedly through a book, an ad, or a random conversation. These fragments fit together like a secret language the universe uses to speak with you. What's even more astonishing is that synchronization accelerates. Where once an intention might take months or years to root, now you see reflections in days, even hours. It's as if a machine has been finely tuned to resonate with your frequency. The universe responds almost instantly. Along with this, your perception of time also shifts. Sometimes an hour feels like only a few minutes, or the opposite, a few minutes stretch out like an entire hour. This is not an illusion, but the effect of your awareness beginning to detach from the linear clock and enter an energy field where time bends and stretches like waves. In quantum mechanics, time is not an absolute flow, but a variable that can be bent by energy and perception. You're beginning to feel this directly within your own experience. All these signs point to one reality. The energy field around you is becoming more sensitive. Like a finely tuned antenna, you start to pick up frequencies, sense them, and co-create with the vibration of the universe. This is not by chance, but a sign that you are entering the stage of merging consciousness and reality, where the boundary between you and the universe dissolves, leaving only an endless symphony of coherence. There is a crucial stage in awakening that many call the transitional threshold, or what is often likened to entering the void, the space between two worlds. This is an especially fragile moment. Outwardly, reality may look unchanged with no clear difference, yet inwardly you have transformed so deeply that you are no longer the same. It can feel as if you are living in two overlapping wave fields, One is the old self with habits, memories, and beliefs that once bound you. The other is the new self, lighter, clearer, vibrating at a higher frequency. When the world still reflects familiar signals from the past, old people, old situations, old emotions, it's easy to doubt, have I really changed, or am I just fooling myself? In truth, this is a natural law of transformation. Just as water at boiling point does not instantly turn to vapor, there is a delay where molecules vibrate intensely, preparing to break into a new state. Consciousness works the same way. Before the outer world adjusts to reflect your inner shift, you must pass through a buffer zone of uncertainty, the void. In quantum physics, this state resembles superposition. You are simultaneously the old and the emerging new, and the final outcome depends on the frequency you choose to hold. This is the decisive point. If you vibrate in doubt, you will be pulled back to the old reality. But if you remain aligned within, living, feeling, and acting as the new self, then the outer world must adjust to match you. The transitional threshold is not failure, but a sign you are close to breakthrough. This fragile zone is like a cosmic doorway, testing your faith, patience, and ability to sustain frequency. Once you step through, the world is no longer a mirror of the past, but a faithful reflection of the new being you have chosen. Once the doorway of consciousness opens, you step into a land of no return. Like seeing a mirage in the desert, you cannot unsee it. The veil between real and unreal has dropped, and your inner eyes have been trained to recognize truth. Many describe this time as both chaotic and sacred. Chaotic, because old structures that once held you begin to collapse. Habits, social roles, beliefs, once absolute, now loosen and shatter. You may feel as if everything is falling apart, relationships shifting, work no longer fitting, old dreams fading. The entire old system, built on a limited identity, is dissolving, making space for something vaster. Yet at the same time, it is sacred. Like a seed breaking its shell for the sprout to emerge, your consciousness is undergoing rebirth. New rays of awareness begin to break through. You realize you are not just a physical body, not just memories or social labels, but a being capable of interacting with the quantum field of the cosmos. In quantum physics, there is the concept of a quantum leap. When an electron jumps from one orbit to a higher one, it does not travel linearly, but jumps into a new state. Your consciousness works the same way. Once you have seen, known, and tasted the deeper truth of your being, you cannot return to the old level. Though it may look chaotic on the surface, the truth is you are standing at the edge of your own evolution. This is not loss, but the foundation of expansion. Every collapse, every rupture, is an invitation to restructure your inner world in greater harmony with your higher frequency. Once you have seen, you cannot unsee, and that alone is proof your journey of conscious evolution has truly begun. In traditional worldviews, we were taught that consciousness is only a byproduct of the brain, like smoke rising from fire. Matter was seen as the foundation, and mind merely the result, a secondary, fleeting phenomenon without real weight in the machinery of the universe. But as the doorway of quantum physics opens, this assumption begins to crumble. Pioneers in both science and spirituality have offered a radical reversal. Consciousness is not the effect, but the foundation. Instead of matter producing awareness, they see consciousness as the primal field of energy from which matter emerges. In this view, the universe is not a lifeless machine, but a living flow of information, potential, and infinite possibility, where the observer, through intention and awareness, becomes a co-creator of reality. Quantum mechanics illustrates this vividly through the double-slit experiment. A particle can exist in many states at once, as a probability wave, until observed. The act of observation, consciousness itself, forces the particle to choose a definite state and become matter. In other words, consciousness precedes matter. This idea also echoes in ancient philosophies. Vedic sages, Buddhists, and Western mystics all proclaimed, the material world is only a shadow cast from a higher plane of reality, the plane of consciousness. Modern science is now catching up, with neuroscience and theoretical physics increasingly showing that the mind can reshape the brain, and belief can rewrite the body's biology. Reversing our view of reality is a profound turning point. It frees you from helplessness and hands you back the key to creation. If consciousness is the foundation, you are no longer a product of the world. You are its origin. You do not merely live in the universe lives within you. And once you understand this, living in the God state is no longer a distant idea, but your most natural way of being. In quantum physics, there is a strange yet pivotal phenomenon known as the observer effect. When a particle exists in a wave state, it carries countless possibilities simultaneously. But the very moment observation occurs, all of those potential states collapse into a single outcome. The particle chooses a position, a path, a unique reality. The astonishing part is that it is not the external physical system, but the act of observation that determines the result. Consciousness does not merely watch the world, it participates in shaping it. On a broader level, this principle mirrors human life directly. The way you observe yourself, through your beliefs, thoughts, and self-labels, is the very mechanism that determines the reality you experience. When you view life through a lens of lack, you collapse the vast possibilities of who you could be into a narrow, restricted reality. But if you observe the same situation through the belief that you are abundant, capable, and worthy, then the world around you resonates with that frequency, opening up a richer reality. The observer effect shows us reality is not fixed, but an infinite flow of probabilities waiting to be shaped by your awareness. The more consistently you hold a perspective, the more firmly you stabilize the form that the universe arranges for you. This explains why some people live in loops of fear and failure, while others, despite similar starting points, step into spirals of opportunity, flow, and synchronicity. The universe, in its silence, does not choose for you. It simply reflects the observer you are being. In other words, the way you observe is the blueprint of the reality you experience. And when you shift your perspective, the entire world before you changes accordingly. In quantum mechanics, there is a strange but foundational phenomenon, the observer effect. Before observation, a particle exists as a wave, holding infinite possibilities simultaneously. It could be here, there, or in multiple places at once. But the instant a measuring device is pointed at it, all overlapping possibilities collapse into one choice. The particle decides its position, path, or specific state. Observation, therefore, does not simply record reality, it creates it. This applies not only in laboratories, but also in daily life. The way you observe yourself operates by the same principle. When you continually view yourself through a lens of lack, I'm not good enough, I always fail, you collapse your vast field of potential into a narrow, repetitive reality. The outside world simply mirrors the inner gaze. But when you shift your observation, I am learning, I am capable, I am opening to new opportunities, you activate different streams of probability, allowing the universe to rearrange events in alignment with your new belief and perception. In other words, reality is not a rigid wall but a flexible field of probabilities waiting to be shaped by consciousness. When you shift your observation, you are not merely changing perspective, you are changing the very script that the universe writes for you. This is why some people appear lucky again and again. They are not randomly favored, but they are observing life through a frequency that allows luck to manifest. The observer effect reminds us, you are not a passive witness to your life. You are a creator. Every belief, every label you place upon yourself is a measuring device, influencing your own quantum field. And once you realize this power, you can deliberately choose how to observe in order to open into a greater reality. In modern physics experiments, scientists have discovered that matter does not exist as a solid block, but as a network of energy vibrations in space. Every atom, every electron vibrates within an invisible field. From a quantum perspective, you too are not merely a physical body, but a field of consciousness, a vast screen upon which your body and life story appear as fleeting expressions. This means you are not confined to your skin or your name. The body, memories, and experiences you live are merely waves rising within the ocean of consciousness you truly are. You are not the boat drifting on the sea, you are the sea itself. And when you realize this, your entire relationship with life reverses. Instead of thinking my consciousness is trapped in my body, you understand that your body and life are floating within the field of consciousness that pervades all. Spiritual masters call this the state of identifying with the observer. Quantum physicist Amit Goswami once affirmed, "Consciousness is not a product of the brain. It is the foundation from which the brain and matter arise." In other words, you need not search for your true essence in cells or past memories. You are already the foundation, the intelligent field that is always observing, always creating. When you live from this point, a strange freedom appears. You are no longer identified with pain, failure, or even success. You can experience them, but they no longer define you. Like a screen that is never harmed by the film projected on it, your field of consciousness remains intact, unchanging. Realizing you are the field, you no longer ask, "How do I change my body or my circumstances?" Instead, you begin to understand, "I only need to change the frequency I emit." When the field shifts, everything within the field, body, life, reality, automatically shifts with it. This is a turning point in the awakening journey. From seeing yourself as a character, you become the very sky in which the play unfolds. Imagine you are not living in a universe run by rigid chains of cause and effect, where every action is the inevitable result of a linear equation. Quantum physics reveals another picture. Reality is not a fixed path, but an infinite field of possibilities, where every probability exists simultaneously, waiting to be chosen. In this picture, action is no longer mere rational reaction, but the art of selecting a frequency to step into the timeline that matches. The new rule of action begins with resonance. Instead of placing blind faith in logic, you listen to the resonance within your own field of consciousness. An idea, an opportunity, or a sudden intuition, they are all vibrational signals. If you feel a frequency that awakens energy within you, that is the possibility waiting to be made real. Your action, when flowing from this resonance, is like pulling a branch of quantum waves towards you, turning it into reality. This explains why sometimes illogical decisions lead you to outcomes far beyond expectation. An unexpected step that feels right can open a whole new chain of events. Meanwhile, choices made from dry calculation often keep you in old orbits. You are not merely acting, you are shifting frequency, and each action becomes a switch activating a new timeline. So instead of asking, "Is this choice reasonable?" try asking, "How does this choice resonate with me? Does it expand or contract my inner energy?" In the quantum universe, the energy you carry at the moment of decision is the signal you send into the field of reality, and the field, faithful like a mirror, will reflect back the exact frequency you select. You are no longer just the one taking action, but the one weaving reality through every vibration you choose to align with. This is the new rule of the universe. In the classical world, people often said, "Seeing is believing." But in the quantum universe, the principle works the other way around. You believe first, and then you see. This is not a vague philosophy, but a truth hidden within the very mechanics of reality. Belief, or more precisely, your inner frequency, is the signal you broadcast into the infinite field of possibility. And that field will never respond differently, except by reflecting the frequency you hold steady. Imagine standing before an endless ocean of unexpressed possibilities. Each possibility is like a potential wave, ready to rise when called by name. Your belief is that call. When you hold your belief firm, even before external evidence appears, you are sustaining a stable rhythm in the field. At the right moment, the universe cannot help but adjust itself to match the rhythm you persistently radiate. If you only believe once evidence arrives, you are letting old reality dictate new limits. You are trapped in the loop of the past, endlessly recreating what has already been. On the other hand, if you dare to believe first, to believe in healing, in love, in opportunity, in a leap forward, you open a new timeline where those possibilities become real. You are not waiting to be convinced. You become the living evidence of your own belief. This does not mean denying logic, but rising above it. Quantum physics has shown that observation collapses probability into actuality. But observation here is not just seeing with the eyes, it is a state of attention, a state of trust. Each time you hold belief, you are observing that possibility at the energetic level. And like an electron obediently taking position when measured, reality will take the form aligned with the belief you embody. So the question is no longer, when will I see it happen? But, do I have the courage to hold the frequency of belief until it manifests? On the journey of consciousness shift, there is a fascinating phenomenon touched by both science and spirituality, the loop of positive reinforcement. When you maintain a new frequency, belief, emotion, or state of awareness, and reality begins reflecting it back, an internal chain reaction is triggered. The brain, as a sophisticated biological machine, releases dopamine and oxytocin, two reward hormones that make you feel joy, connection, and motivation. But the deeper mechanism is more important. Dopamine doesn't just create instant pleasure. It imprints the brain with the message, "This is the right path, continue." Oxytocin doesn't just bring warmth, it makes you open, willing to bond and trust the flow. Together, they strengthen the initial belief, making it more resilient against doubt. Once belief is locked at the biological level, you enter synchronicity, a chain of meaningful coincidences. You think of someone, and they call. You seek an answer, and the exact book, chapter, and page appear. You hold an intention, and an unexpected opportunity opens where you least expect it. This is not magic in the fictional sense, but the natural result of resonance between the field of consciousness and the field of matter. You change, the universe responds, and the response strengthens your trust. Picture yourself learning to pilot a spacecraft. At first, everything feels shaky, but each time you tune to the right frequency, the ship responds instantly, giving you a sense of mastery. The brain remembers the positive feedback, and you become more confident to fly farther, faster. Life works the same way. Reality is the cockpit, inner signal is the steering wheel, and the loop of positive reinforcement is the fuel that sustains your journey. In the end, this loop turns belief into experience, experience into evidence, and evidence into the foundation of a higher level of consciousness. Once you step into this spiral, synchronicity is no longer an exception. It becomes the familiar language the universe uses to converse with you. When entering awakening, many describe the first encounter as a fleeting visit. Sometimes you unexpectedly touch the God state or quantum state, a feeling of merging with the whole, where all limits dissolve and awareness expands beyond the personal self. But in the beginning, it feels like a rare guest, arriving suddenly, leaving quickly, lingering only as a trace hard to hold on to. The key lies in repetition and choice. Each time you reach that layer of awareness, you stand at a crossroads. Treat it as just a beautiful moment, or begin choosing it as your new identity. When you return again and again, aligning repeatedly, what was once a visitor gradually becomes a resident. You are no longer just visiting, you are settling in. Like learning an instrument. The first notes are clumsy, but with practice, music becomes a second language. The quantum state works the same way. At first, it feels like a rare explosion, but the more you sustain it, the more it becomes your inner home, a place you can return to any time, without luck or chance. Scientifically, this reflects the formation of new neural networks. Each time you choose to live from a higher frequency, the brain carves pathways linked to peace, clarity, and connection. The old coats of fear, doubt, and ego lose their pull. Instead, the new field of trust and presence becomes your default. You no longer seek the divine experience, you embody it. When you settle in this state, a subtle shift occurs. The outer world no longer defines who you are. Instead, you carry the quantum field within, coloring every experience with it. Your presence radiates outward, like an invisible lighthouse, shaping how others perceive you and how opportunities find their way to you. From a sudden visitor, the quantum state becomes a spiritual home, a place where you don't just dwell, but create, rest, and live. And once you have settled there, you will never again be lost in the maze of the old. On the journey into the quantum state, one inevitable stage is the release of the old ego. This is often misunderstood. Many think they are broken, that the collapse of familiar identities is a sign of dysfunction. But the truth is the opposite. It is not breakdown, but the deliberate deconstruction of a mechanism that was once useful but has now become obsolete. The ego is like a suit of armor. In early life, it protects us from impact, giving us a form to enter the social world. It is tied to our names, roles, memories, and even the limiting beliefs we once needed for survival. But as consciousness expands, the armor no longer fits. Instead of protecting, it becomes a burden, obscuring the infinite essence within. Releasing the old ego is a process of self-dismantling, like a snake shedding its skin or a caterpillar leaving its cocoon. In that moment, you may feel empty, undefined, even disoriented. Yet that emptiness is sacred space, the womb in which the new can emerge. Without dissolution, there is no room for creation to follow. From a neuroscience perspective, this is when old neural pathways, linked to habits and limiting beliefs, begin to weaken. At the same time, neuroplasticity opens the chance to form new connections, reflecting an identity better aligned with the frequency you are choosing. In quantum mechanics, this is the collapse of the old wave, freeing energy to resynchronize with new possibilities. Do not see this collapse as an ending. It is a gateway. When the old ego dissolves, you do not lose yourself. You only lose the temporary masks, returning to the true creator within. And from this new ground, you can construct a wider, truer, more resonant reality. As consciousness shifts into a new frequency, seemingly small things in daily life become the true measure of transformation. You notice yourself less entangled in familiar triggers. Words, situations, or conflicts that once made you explode no longer hold the same power. Between stimulus and reaction, a space opens up, the space of freedom. In that space, you gain time to observe rather than react. The brain ceases to operate through survival reflexes, yielding instead to conscious awareness. This creates slowness, not delay but a new rhythm, where action arises from alignment with your deeper essence. You begin to listen more deeply, not only to others, but to yourself. A sentence, a feeling, a vibration in your body all become signals to understand the frequency you are resonating with. Instead of straining to force life according to old willpower, you learn to choose frequency. Like a musician tuning strings, you adjust your inner energy to harmonize with the reality you desire. Neuroscience explains that when the nervous system reduces fight or flight activation, the parasympathetic system, rest regeneration, takes over more strongly. This shifts the body into balance where intuition and creativity naturally emerge. In quantum language, you are no longer fighting the wave, but gliding on the chosen one, letting the universe resonate and arrange. This shift gradually becomes a way of life, from hurried reaction to conscious action, from confrontation to resonance. And you realize, true power does not lie in controlling the outside world, but in choosing the inner frequency from which all experience is born. On the quantum awakening path, one core principle becomes clear. You are the starting point of every experience. Everything you see out there, people, situations, outcomes, are not causes, but mirrors reflecting the frequency you emit. This is quantum responsibility. Instead of blaming or resisting the external world, you turn inward and adjust the source, your own consciousness. Picture a mirror. If your face is stained with ink, the mirror will reflect the stain. But you would never try to wipe the mirror to clean your face. The world works the same way. When reality reflects something you dislike, the old ego reacts by resisting, arguing, or trying to change others. But at the quantum level, this only traps you in the loop. The real key is to shift the frequency you broadcast. Neuroscience calls this the shift from victim mode to creator mode. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What frequency am I sending that this has appeared in my life?" That question unlocks power. For if you are the source, you are also the only one who can change it. In quantum physics, the potential field contains infinite possibilities. The frequency you emit pulls one branch of reality into collapse as experience. Thus, quantum responsibility is not a burden, but the ultimate power. The power to choose frequency, and through it, to choose reality. When you truly live by this principle, conflict and adversity are no longer enemies. They become signposts, showing you it is time to adjust within. And each time you do, you come closer to mastering your own energy field, where reality is no longer random but conscious creation. Many believe awakening is the final destination, the moment of recognizing the true self and the universe, after which everything changes forever. But in reality, awakening is only a doorway, not the end. The instant you realize you are no longer bound by the old ego, that consciousness rises beyond body and circumstance. That is only the beginning of the quantum journey. The harder, more vital task is to stabilize the new state of awareness. Imagine learning to tune a radio to a clearer station with sweeter music, but if your hand still trembles and you easily twist the dial back, the static returns. Likewise, after awakening, you must practice holding this new frequency channel in daily life. Stabilizing quantum consciousness does not mean escaping the material world, but bringing awakened awareness into every ordinary moment. Whether at work, in conversation, in love, or facing hardship, you keep your root frequency steady. This requires inner discipline, observing yourself, noticing when you slip into old programs, and gently returning to center. In neuroscience, this is rebuilding neural networks, from automatic reactions to conscious choices. In quantum physics, this is sustaining coherent resonance, so the field continuously reflects corresponding realities. And in spiritual language, this is living in the God state, not as a rare flash of light, but as the ever-present inner home. When you stabilize this new frequency, life is no longer a cycle of chasing and fixing the outside. It becomes a natural flow where you co-create with the universe in every moment. Awakening opens the door, but stabilization is the true journey, and that is the path to lasting inner freedom.